All right, so we're diving into something really fascinating today, this whole idea of building a resilient mind. How to actually handle the stresses and anxieties that just seem to come with modern life. And you've shared some really interesting information with us, especially focusing on this book you have, Resilient Minds, Coping with Stress, Anxiety, and Modern Challenges.
Yeah, and I think what we're aiming to do today is really kind of cut through the noise, pull out those really practical, valuable insights that we can apply to our own lives from this book.
Yeah.
It's almost like a cheat sheet to understanding how to strengthen that mental resilience without feeling bogged down by all the details and information.
I love that, a cheat sheet, yeah. And the book starts off with a perspective that I found really refreshing, actually. It basically says, hey, trying to completely eliminate stress, that's probably not realistic. It's more about learning how to handle it, how to respond effectively to all the curveballs life throws our way. So if we're accepting that stress is sort of part of the package, where does the book suggest we even begin with building this mental strength?
Well, the book is very strong on this idea that the first step is really cultivating self-awareness. It's about taking that time to honestly reflect on what your personal triggers are, what specifically causes you to feel stressed or anxious. Because without that personalized understanding, any coping strategies you try might not really be hitting the mark.
And it's not just about, vague feelings, right? The book suggests a really practical tool that I think a lot of us might already have access to for actually digging into those triggers.
Right? Keeping a journal is presented as a really powerful way to start uncovering those patterns in your stress and anxiety. By regularly jotting down those difficult situations, how you react physically and emotionally, any contributing factors you notice, you start to see those trends emerge, those connections that you might not have been consciously aware of.
Can you give us a bit of a more concrete picture? Like what sort of connections might someone, like me, like you, discover through this journaling process, according to the book?
Yeah, so the book gives some really helpful examples. So, for instance, you might start to realize, oh, those tight deadlines at work, they consistently lead to this surge of anxiety. And then for me, that shows up as tension headaches and trouble sleeping. And then having that awareness then empowers you to, okay, how can I manage work pressure better? Maybe I need better time management skills. Maybe I need to incorporate some relaxation exercises into my workday. Or another example they give is maybe you realize social gatherings always trigger social anxiety and you end up avoiding them altogether. And then that specific insight could be the push to seek professional help, maybe explore something like CBT to really address the root cause of that social anxiety.
So it's moving beyond just saying, I'm stressed, to, okay, what is causing this and how does it play out in my experience? So once we've got that clear picture of ourselves, how does the book actually define this thing we're working towards, this resilience?
Resilient Minds defines resilience as this ability to bounce back from tough times, to adapt effectively when challenges come up, and to maintain your overall mental well-being, even when you're facing difficult circumstances. It's important to note that it's not about becoming immune to stress or anxiety, but it's about developing those skills and the inner resources to navigate those inevitable experiences in a healthy way.
I like that. It's almost like having shock absorbers for your mind. You're not expecting to drive on perfectly smooth roads all the time. Now, the book also suggests kind of a particular way of thinking about building this resilience, this kind of multifaceted approach.
Exactly. The book really emphasizes a holistic approach where it sees physical and mental well-being as deeply intertwined. Strengthening one significantly supports the other. So it's about looking at these key components working together in harmony, I guess.
Okay, so let's unpack those components a little bit. What are some of those key areas the book highlights?
It points to several interconnected areas. Regular physical activity isn't just about the body. It directly impacts your mental state, helps regulate those stress hormones, improves your mood. Prioritizing good sleep hygiene is absolutely essential for both physical restoration and mental clarity. Fueling your body with healthy eating habits, those provide the building blocks for both brain function and overall energy levels. Then cultivating strong, supportive relationships, that gives you that vital emotional support when times are tough. And finally, the book really stresses the importance of mindfulness practices to enhance self-awareness and that ability to regulate your emotions.
Okay, so it's about nurturing the whole person, the mind, the body, and those connections we have with others. Now, you mentioned before identifying those stress sources, and the book actually introduces a specific technique, right? This idea of a stress audit to help pinpoint those.
Right. It's a systematic way to really examine different areas of your life. So you're looking at work, relationships, your finances, your health, your leisure activities, and you're identifying those particular sources of stress within each area. And for each one, the book suggests noting how often it occurs, how intense it feels, maybe even using a rating scale to get a clearer picture.
So you're moving from "I feel overwhelmed" to "here's the data on what's contributing to it." And the book doesn't stop at identifying the triggers, right? It also emphasizes understanding how we personally react when we're under pressure.
Absolutely. Becoming aware of your own unique stress response patterns is just as crucial. So the book stresses understanding. Does stress mainly show up for you as physical symptoms like muscle tension or stomach issues? Or is it more emotional turmoil, irritability, sadness, or maybe cognitive difficulties like trouble concentrating or racing thoughts? And it also encourages you to recognize, does your response to stress tend to be gradual or does it hit you suddenly? And do those feelings usually pass quickly or linger for a longer time? Recognizing these patterns helps you anticipate how you might react and develop proactive coping strategies that are tailored to your specific experience.
So if you know that work deadlines always make your shoulders tense up, you can be proactive about incorporating stretching breaks into your day. And speaking of those internal experiences, the book also dives into how our own thinking patterns can actually amplify our stress levels, right?
Yes, exactly. Resilient Minds really highlights that stress often comes with these things called cognitive distortions. They're basically inaccurate or unhelpful ways of thinking that tend to magnify stress and anxiety, making things feel even worse than they might actually be. And the book gives some common examples of these distorted thinking patterns.
Like, can you give us some examples? Those common unhelpful thought traps.
Yeah, there's catastrophizing, which is assuming the absolute worst case scenario is going to happen, even if there's no real evidence to support that. Then there's all or nothing thinking, seeing things in black and white categories, no room for nuance. Overgeneralization, which is drawing these broad negative conclusions based on a single isolated event. And then personalization, taking things personally, assuming negative events are directly related to you, even when they might not be. Learning to recognize these patterns is the key to challenging their validity and managing stress more effectively.
It's like our mind can sometimes run this negative commentary track that isn't even grounded in reality. And this brings us back to that connection you talked about before, that really strong link between what's happening in our minds and what's happening in our bodies, right?
Absolutely. The book really drives home that point.
Yeah.
Your physical well-being is directly linked to your mental resilience. You can't effectively nurture one while neglecting the other. It really reinforces that holistic approach we discussed, where taking care of your physical health creates a foundation for mental and emotional strength.
Okay, so we've got self-awareness, understanding our triggers, how we respond, recognizing those unhelpful thought patterns. We've got that holistic approach that considers both our minds and bodies. Are there specific pillars or areas Resilient Minds really focuses on when it comes to actually building this resilience?
Yeah, the book outlines several key pillars, like self-awareness, which we've already touched on, but also cultivating self-compassion, treating yourself with the same kindness and understanding you'd offer a friend. Then physical well-being. That encompasses regular exercise, prioritizing quality sleep, good nutrition. It also highlights incorporating mindfulness practices into your life, learning CBT techniques to manage your thoughts, nurturing strong social support networks, setting healthy boundaries, and cultivating an attitude of gratitude.
Okay, that's pretty comprehensive. So let's dig into some of the specific recommendations within these areas. For instance, on that physical well-being pillar, any particular guidelines for exercise?
The book suggests aiming for at least 150 minutes of moderate intensity aerobic exercise each week. This could be anything that gets your heart rate up, brisk walking, cycling, swimming. The key is finding activities you genuinely enjoy. Makes it much easier to stick with it long term.
And what about sleep? We all know it's important, but I'm guessing Resilient Minds has some specific advice on sleep hygiene for supporting our mental resilience.
It does. It emphasizes establishing a consistent sleep schedule, going to bed and waking up around the same time each day, even on weekends, to regulate your body's natural rhythm. Creating a relaxing bedtime routine, maybe a warm bath or reading, can also help signal to your body it's time to wind down. It advises avoiding caffeine and alcohol before bed, as well as minimizing screen time from those devices because of the blue light. Aim for around 7 to 9 hours of quality sleep each night for optimal physical and mental restoration. And of course, if you consistently have trouble sleeping, it's always a good idea to talk to a healthcare professional.
That's great advice and reinforces what many of us probably know but might not always put into practice. Let's talk about nutrition. The book also touches on how what we eat can impact our stress levels and overall resilience. Can you tell us more about those connections?
Definitely. The book highlights that a well-balanced diet provides those essential nutrients that your brain and body need to function optimally, and both of those are critical for managing stress and building resilience. So it encourages focusing on whole, unprocessed foods, lots of fruits, vegetables, whole grains, lean protein, and being mindful of processed foods, sugary drinks, excessive caffeine, as those can lead to those energy crashes and mood fluctuations that can actually make you more vulnerable to stress. Yeah. Staying hydrated is also super important.
So it's about fueling ourselves with the right kind of energy to help us handle those stressors. Now, the book also gets into some specific relaxation techniques, and it starts with something we all do, breathing.
Yes. Deep breathing exercises are presented as a foundational tool for managing stress, both in the moment and over time. The book explains that these techniques directly impact your autonomic nervous system, which you can think of as having two gears, the fight or flight response and the rest and digest response. Deep breathing is like shifting gears, engaging that calming rest and digest system to counteract the effects of stress.
And it outlines a couple of specific deep breathing techniques that are especially effective. Let's start with diaphragmatic breathing. How does the book explain that one?
So diaphragmatic breathing, sometimes called belly breathing, focuses on using your diaphragm, that large muscle below your lungs, to take those deep, full breaths. The book contrasts it with that shallow chest breathing we often do when we're stressed. So to practice, you find a comfortable position, sitting or lying down. Place one hand on your chest, the other on your belly. As you inhale slowly and deeply through your nose, you should feel the hand on your belly rise, while the hand on your chest stays relatively still. Pause briefly, and then exhale slowly through your mouth, feeling your belly fall. The book suggests doing this for about 5 to 10 minutes to promote relaxation.
And the other technique is box breathing, which seems to be gaining popularity as a quick way to calm down. How is that one explained in the book?
Box breathing, or square breathing, involves 4 equal phases: inhale, hold, exhale, and pause. The book suggests a count of 4 for each phase, but you could adjust it to what feels comfortable. So inhale slowly through your nose for a count of 4, hold for 4, exhale slowly through your mouth for 4, and then pause for 4 before starting the next cycle. This rhythm can be really helpful in calming your mind and body, especially in those high-pressure situations.
Okay, both of those sound super accessible, something you can do pretty much anywhere. The book also talks about progressive muscle relaxation. What's the idea behind that technique for stress reduction?
Progressive muscle relaxation is all about systematically tensing and then consciously releasing different muscle groups throughout your body. The book explains that this helps you become more aware of where you're holding tension and provides a way to interrupt that physical cycle of stress. It usually follows a specific sequence, starting with your toes and working your way up to your head, hitting all the major muscle groups. By focusing on that tension and then the release, you can achieve a deep state of relaxation.
It's like creating that contrast between tension and relaxation, which can really help you tune in to your body. Now, Resilient Minds also puts a lot of emphasis on the role of our minds in building resilience, particularly through mindfulness.
Yes, mindfulness meditation is presented as a really powerful way to cultivate that greater awareness of the present moment without judgment. It's not about emptying your mind, which can be frustrating, but learning to observe your thoughts and feelings as they come up without getting swept away by them or judging them. This usually involves focusing on a chosen anchor, like your breath or physical sensations, and gently bringing your attention back whenever your mind wanders, which it inevitably will.
And the book offers some really accessible entry points for people who are new to this.
Yeah, absolutely. The body scan, where you systematically bring your attention to different parts of your body, noticing any sensations, is a gentle entry point. And mindful breathing, simply focusing on the natural rhythm of your breath, is another easy one to start with. Even a few minutes of consistent practice each day can have noticeable benefits in reducing stress, improving focus, and regulating emotions.
Okay, so it's about being present in the here and now. The book also talks about practices that beautifully integrate both mind and body, like yoga and Tai Chi. What does it say about their role in building resilience?
Yoga and Tai Chi are highlighted as ancient practices that integrate physical postures, breathing techniques, and mindful movement to calm the nervous system and create a sense of inner peace and balance. The book talks about various styles of yoga like Hatha, Vinyasa, Restorative, Iyengar, and Kundalini, each offering a slightly different path to stress reduction and well-being. Tai Chi is described as a kind of meditation in motion, with slow, deliberate movements and deep breathing to promote relaxation improve balance, and cultivate internal energy. Both practices are presented as holistic ways to reduce stress and enhance overall mental and emotional well-being, contributing to greater resilience.
It's fascinating how these practices really bridge the gap between the physical and mental. The book also explores the power of our imagination through techniques like guided imagery and visualization. How are those presented as tools for building resilience?
Guided imagery and visualization harness the power of our minds to create vivid mental images, which can be used for both deep relaxation and achieving goals. The book explains that our brains often respond to these imagined experiences as if they were real, triggering those corresponding physiological and emotional responses. Guided imagery usually involves listening to descriptions of peaceful scenes, like a beach, to induce relaxation, while visualization involves creating mental pictures of desired outcomes to enhance motivation and build confidence.
So it's about using our inner world to create positive experiences and influence our overall state. Now let's touch back on nutrition for a moment. Resilient Minds gets into more specifics about nutrients and their connection to stress. Any highlights in that area?
Yeah, the book highlights certain nutrients that play a big role in regulating mood and reducing anxiety. Magnesium, B vitamins, and omega-3 fatty acids are mentioned specifically. Magnesium is crucial for healthy neurotransmitter function and muscle relaxation. B vitamins are important for nerve function and producing those mood-regulating neurotransmitters. Omega-3s are essential for brain health and have anti-inflammatory properties. The book also emphasizes antioxidants, which protect our bodies from stress-induced damage.
And it also talks about how some foods can actually have a negative impact on our stress levels, right?
Right. The book discusses how processed foods high in sugar and refined carbs can lead to blood sugar spikes and crashes, which contribute to energy dips and mood swings, making us more susceptible to stress. So it emphasizes regular meal times and hydration to stabilize blood sugar. Mindful eating, which involves paying attention to hunger cues, savoring each bite, is also highlighted as a way to reduce stress-related overeating, and advises being mindful of caffeine and alcohol, as those can interfere with our natural stress response.
So it's not just what we eat, but how we eat too. Now, time management, a huge source of stress for many. Does Resilient Minds offer any insights on how effective time management can actually help reduce stress?
Absolutely. The book presents effective time management as a key tool for mitigating stress. It highlights strategies like prioritizing tasks, setting realistic deadlines, using tools like to-do lists and calendars, delegating when appropriate, learning to say no to avoid overload, and scheduling breaks to prevent burnout.
Those are all really practical steps for taking control and feeling less overwhelmed. Now, we talked before about those negative thought patterns. Resilient Minds gets into how we can identify and then challenge them using CBT. Can you explain that initial step of actually identifying those automatic negative thoughts?
Yeah, the book says that the first step is to become aware of that stream of negative thoughts that often runs in the background. These thoughts are often our interpretations, not facts. So it encourages us to pay attention to these automatic negative thoughts, often called ANTs, and see how they impact our emotions and behaviors. Techniques like keeping a thought journal and practicing mindfulness to simply observe your thoughts can help bring these patterns into our conscious awareness.
So bringing those often subconscious thoughts to light. And then the book talks about this process called cognitive restructuring. What does that involve?
Cognitive restructuring is actively challenging and modifying those negative thought patterns we've identified. It involves gathering evidence for and against the thought, questioning the underlying assumptions, and replacing that unhelpful thought with a more balanced and realistic perspective.
It's about training our brains to think in a way that supports our well-being, not undermines it. Now, self-care is a huge topic these days. How does the book define self-care in the context of building resilience?
The book defines self-care as a proactive and holistic approach to nurturing your well-being across all dimensions: physical, emotional, and mental. It emphasizes that self-care isn't a luxury, it's a necessity for coping with stress, managing anxiety, and building resilience.
And it also addresses some common misconceptions about self-care.
Absolutely. The book tackles the idea that self-care is selfish or extravagant. It explains that neglecting your own needs actually reduces your capacity to help others, and that self-care doesn't have to be grand gestures. It's often about small, consistent practices.
It's about those everyday actions that contribute to feeling good. Now, the book gives concrete examples of self-care across those different dimensions. Can you share a few?
Sure. Physical self-care: exercise, sleep, healthy eating. Emotional self-care: journaling, creative expression, spending time in nature, mindfulness. Mental self-care: reading, learning new things, setting realistic goals, self-compassion.
So it's really broad and personal. The book also offers guidance on figuring out our own unique self-care needs. How do we tap into that?
Self-reflection is key. Maybe using that journal again. Consider what drains your energy versus what energizes you. Reflect on your biggest stressors and what helps you cope. This can give you insights for creating a self-care plan that really works for you.
It's about tuning in to what we truly need. Now, with busy lives, prioritizing self-care can feel like another to-do. How does the book address integrating self-care into a packed schedule?
The book stresses recognizing the cost of neglecting self-care and reframing it as an investment, not an extra. It suggests using micro-moments for small acts of self-care, scheduling it like any appointment, and finding ways to integrate it into your routines.
Making it non-negotiable. The book also provides guidance on creating a personalized self-care routine. What are the key steps involved?
Start by reflecting on your needs and tracking how your current activities make you feel. Brainstorm activities you enjoy that meet those needs. Schedule them into your week. Be adaptable and willing to adjust, and regularly reassess what's working.
So it's a process of experimentation and adjustment. Now, staying consistent with self-care can be tough. What strategies does Resilient Minds offer for sticking with it?
The book advises challenging all-or-nothing thinking, which can lead to quitting after a slip-up. It suggests habit stacking, linking new habits to existing routines. Managing external factors that might interfere, focusing on the positive outcomes, celebrating small wins, and building a supportive network are also key.
Great tips for making self-care sustainable. The book also talks about gratitude. How does focusing on gratitude contribute to mental well-being?
Cultivating gratitude means intentionally focusing on and appreciating the positive things in your life. It shifts your focus away from stressors and towards the good, improving mood, increasing well-being, and enhancing your ability to cope with challenges. Techniques like keeping a gratitude journal and practicing mindful reflection are suggested.
Training our minds to notice the good. We touched on mindfulness earlier. Resilient Minds also addresses how to use mindfulness specifically for reducing stress. Can you elaborate?
Mindfulness, that present moment awareness, is incredibly effective for stress reduction. The book explains techniques like mindful breathing, mindful walking, mindful eating, and mindful listening. By bringing that focused awareness to these everyday activities, you interrupt that cycle of stressful thoughts and cultivate calm.
Being present instead of caught up in worry or regret. Now, it's important to acknowledge that sometimes challenges might require more than self-help. The book addresses when to seek professional help. What are some key indicators?
Feeling constantly overwhelmed, significant changes in sleep or appetite, loss of interest in things you enjoyed, difficulty managing emotions, relying on unhealthy coping mechanisms, or having thoughts of self-harm are all signs to seek help.
Those are really important for all of us to be aware of. The book also gives a helpful overview of different types of mental health professionals, right?
Yes, it distinguishes between psychologists, psychiatrists, counselors, and psychiatric nurses, explaining their roles and qualifications. This can be helpful when considering professional support to see what type of help might be most appropriate for you.
Good to have that clarity. For someone considering therapy, finding the right therapist can feel daunting. What guidance does the book offer?
The book suggests clarifying your therapy goals, researching professionals through referrals, insurance directories, and online platforms, checking qualifications and experience, and taking advantage of initial consultations to see if it's a good fit. It even suggests key questions to ask during that consultation.
Being proactive and doing your research to find the right match. Once in therapy, the book also offers advice on navigating that process effectively. What are some key things to keep in mind?
Building a strong therapeutic alliance with your therapist, active participation, realistic expectations, open communication, addressing setbacks, understanding practical aspects like scheduling and cost, and continuing your self-care outside of therapy are all emphasized.
It's a partnership where communication and expectations are key. Now, as we create our resilience plans, the book stresses assessing our current stress levels. Besides journaling, any other methods suggested?
The book suggests using standardized stress assessment questionnaires, like the Perceived Stress Scale, to measure your perceived stress. It also reiterates self-reflection to identify triggers and responses and evaluating your current coping mechanisms.
Establishing a baseline to track progress, and then comes integrating these strategies into our lives. What practical advice does the book offer for making that happen?
The book suggests starting small, scheduling time for these practices, integrating them into routines, using technology like reminder apps, building a support network, practicing self-compassion, tracking your progress, experimenting to find what works. applying resilience principles to different life areas, and using SMART goals to stay focused.
Making it manageable, sustainable, and personalized. And as we implement these strategies, the book also highlights monitoring our progress and adjusting along the way. How should we approach that?
Regularly review your self-care routine and stress levels. Track what's effective and be flexible and willing to adapt your plan based on what you're learning. It is an ongoing process of evaluation and refinement.
So it's a dynamic plan that evolves. Lastly, Resilient Minds talks about maintaining long-term resilience. What are the keys to sustaining our mental well-being over the long haul?
The book emphasizes ongoing self-compassion, nurturing supportive relationships, consistent mindfulness practices, regular physical activity, healthy sleep, focusing on nutrition, regularly reviewing and adjusting your resilience plan, and incorporating joy and fulfillment into your life. Building and maintaining resilience is a journey, not a destination.
It's about weaving these practices into the fabric of our lives. This deep dive into Resilient Minds has been so insightful. For our listeners, we've explored the importance of self-awareness, that holistic approach to well-being, and how consistent actions, even small ones, can really build resilience. We've also looked at practical techniques like deep breathing, progressive muscle relaxation, mindfulness, CBT principles, and the vital role of self-care. It's amazing how all of these pieces fit together, right?
Yeah, it's like building a toolbox. Equipping yourself with the right tools for any situation. And what I really appreciate is that the book emphasizes that it's a personal journey. There's no one-size-fits-all approach. It's about finding what works for you, experimenting, being patient with yourself.
That's so true. And for our listeners, one final thought to ponder. The book talks about resilience as a process, almost like strengthening your mind's immune system. It's not about being invulnerable to stress, but about developing that capacity to withstand and recover from life's challenges. And that ongoing journey of self-discovery and adaptation can lead to a more balanced and fulfilling life. So, what small, consistent action can you take today to start building your mental immune system?
I love that question. It's a powerful one to reflect on. And remember, we've only scratched the surface of all the strategies in the book. I encourage you to go back, revisit your notes, explore those guided meditations, the sample resilience plan templates. All those resources are there to support you on this journey.
And if you have any questions, anything you'd like us to explore further in future deep dives, let us know. Building resilience is an ongoing conversation, and we're here to support you every step of the way.
Absolutely. Remember, the journey to a resilient mind is deeply personal. So be patient with yourself, experiment, and discover what works best for you.
Well said. Until next time, keep diving.